Joshua Van is the new flyweight champion, but almost no one in the MMA world truly believes we just witnessed a real changing of the guard, a title fight that never actually began, an arm that twisted only seconds into the action, and a reigning champion whose entire career may have shifted in the blink of an eye. This video breaks down exactly what happened, why the win is so heavily disputed, and how a single freak accident could reshape the entire division. Because this wasn't a normal title loss, this was a 26-second shockwave that turned everything upside down. Joshua Van is now officially the second youngest champion in UFC history, but he didn't beat Alexander Pantoja in any meaningful sense. The fight had barely started. Pantoja landed 6 strikes, Van landed 2, and Pantoja was clearly the one setting the early pace. A hard leg kick disrupted Van's balance. Moments later came the setup. A fake jab, a fake straight. Van lowers his left hand to react, and Pantoja fires a right high kick. The kick lands. Van absorbs part of it with his shoulder and pushes forward. Pantoja tries to post on his arm, the elbow buckles, the arm twists, and the fight ends instantly. Not because one fighter was better, but because the landing went wrong. That's what makes this outcome so controversial. Some argue Van caused the injury by pushing forward. Others see a pure accident with no connection to dominance or control. And the truth is this: nothing in those 26 seconds suggested Pantoja was in trouble. Nothing suggested Van was taking over. A win on paper is not always a win in reality. And years from now, the record will simply say, Joshua Van defeated Alexander Pantoja, even though everyone who watched it knows this wasn't a real fight. Everything now depends on one critical detail: the severity of Pantoja's arm injury. There are 2 possibilities. Scenario 1, a dislocation. If that's the case, the healing time is shorter and a rematch could realistically happen next year. Scenario 2, a fracture. If the arm is actually broken, the recovery becomes long, difficult, and unpredictable. And at 35 years old, there's a real chance he never returns at the same level. That single diagnosis will determine when Pantoja returns and whether we ever see him compete in prime form again. With his injury, the entire flyweight division is in limbo. There's a new champion, but the throne doesn't feel taken. Van holds the belt, but no one sees him as the man who dethroned the king. Every fight moving forward will happen under the shadow of Pantoja's absence. The division has a champion, but not a clear successor. The most painful part isn't the belt changing hands. It's everything we'll never know. Pantoja was in peak form, defending his title, improving every fight, and building a run that could have placed him among the greatest flyweights ever. And now we're left with unanswered questions. Could Van have beaten him in a real fight? Would Tatsuro Taira's grappling have posed a threat? What would a matchup with Horiguchi have looked like? All of those answers were taken away by one awkward landing, not by the better fighter winning. For Joshua Van, this is the toughest possible start to a title reign. Yes, he holds the belt, but now he must prove he belongs there. His first challenge is Tatsuro Taira, a bigger, longer, technically sharp grappler. Exactly the kind of opponent who can expose any weaknesses Van hasn't yet shown. Every fight Van takes from here forward is a test of legitimacy. He might truly be the rightful champion, or he might lose the belt in his first real defense. Both outcomes are realistic. For Pantoja, this night is more than a lost title. He was on track for something special, more defenses, higher pound-for-pound rankings, and a growing argument as one of the greatest flyweights in history. That momentum didn't end because of a punch or a mistake. It ended because of a freak accident, and that leaves his story feeling incomplete. Until the medical report is released, the division waits. Van carries the belt. Pantoja's place remains symbolically empty, and every upcoming fight could redefine the landscape. Everything depends on one question: how fast and how well can Pantoja return? Whatever happens next, the flyweight division is heading into one of its most unpredictable chapters ever. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, follow the channel, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. In the UFC, the next twist usually hits harder than the last one.